Hello, listeners. Before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for being patient with us. The past week has been, well, a little less than ideal. I had a family emergency that has me spending way too damn much time at the hospital on the concrete couches trying to get 15 minutes of sleep. And so because of that, I haven't been able to post new episodes, on our normal schedule. And while I am back at the mic today, things are still definitely a little bit up in the air. So the regular posting schedule might be a little bit unpredictable for a while, but we promise we are still here, still working on content, still researching stories, and still extremely grateful for every single one of you who keeps tuning in. So thank you for sticking with us through the chaos. It means more than you could possibly know. Now, let's get into what you're actually here to listen to. Some detectives chase the job. Others chase the truth. Lou Smit was the kind of man who didn't care about the lights, the press, or the politics. He cared about getting it right. Every time, no shortcuts, no noise, just answers. When John Anderson was sworn in as sheriff of El Paso County in 1995, he knew that he was inheriting a department full of problems and a cold case that had haunted him for years. Heather Dawn Church had been missing for over 2 years. Her remains had been found, but whoever had taken her had vanished back into the shadows. Anderson needed someone who could see in the dark. Lou Smit had already built a name for himself, first as a detective in Colorado Springs, and as the man who cracked some of the state's biggest and toughest homicides, including the brutal murder of Karen Grammer, the sister of actor Kelsey Grammer, back in 1975. That case was vicious, personal, and it was Lou Smit who unraveled it. He had a reputation for letting evidence do the talking. He didn't interrogate his suspects. He studied them. He paid attention to the victims. He treated crime scenes like conversations, details whispered, and Smit knew how to listen. So when Anderson needed someone to lead the Church case forward, he didn't look for a fresh face. He brought Lou Smit on and made him chief of detectives. It was a gamble. Smit wasn't flashy. He wasn't one for bending the command structure, but he had a gift. And what he did next would crack open the case that had been frozen in silence. In this episode, we'll trace Lou Smit's career from his early days to his legend status in the cold case world. We'll walk through his forensic methodology, his relentless focus on the victim, and the moment that changed everything. The identification of a latent fingerprint that had been overlooked for years. A single smudge of truth left behind by a man named Robert Charles Browne. Because sometimes justice doesn't shout, it whispers. And Lou Smit knew how to listen. So, Angela, how's it going tonight?
Going well. How are you?
How's your week going so far? It's just Tuesday, right?
It's just Tuesday, and it's been a long week already.
Already a long week.
Yeah.
Damn.
But it's good. It's all right.
It's supposed to cool down some this week. Maybe get a little bit of rain.
I wasn't with you last week when you wanted it, but I'm with you now.
Yeah. I think we need it. There's been a couple fires popping up around here.
Yeah.
We need...
We just don't need the lightning that creates more fires.
No, we need rain.
Yeah.
Not lightning, rain.
Yeah. Can we put in a request, like a menu request?
Yeah, I already put my request in. I think it's being ignored, however. So, anyway, by the time that Lou Smit stepped into the Heather Dawn Church case, most people had already stopped talking about it. 2 years missing, 1 year since her remains were found, and still nothing. But that's what made Smit different. He didn't need noise. He just needed evidence.
And we need it too.
Yes, I agree.
But he needed it so much that he came out of retirement for it. So that's important. That's really important.
Yep. So listeners, welcome back to Dark Dialogue, the podcast where we unravel the shadows of the human mind and dive deep into the mysteries that haunt small towns and big cities alike. I'm your host, John.
And I'm Angela, and together we shine a light on the stories that keep us up at night, unresolved disappearances, lives stolen too soon, and the questions that refuse to be buried.
In today's episode, we're stepping into the mind and method of Lou Smit, the detective who turned whispers into convictions. We'll explore his early career, his methodical approach to cold cases, and how one partial fingerprint led to one of Colorado's most dangerous killers, Robert Charles Browne.
And if you're here for the long haul like we are, if these cases matter to you like they matter to us, take a second right now to follow, subscribe, rate the show, or give us a thumbs up. Every little action helps push these stories forward and keeps the pressure on.
Because in cases like this, sometimes the break comes years later, and when someone finally pays attention. This is Dark Dialogue, and this is the fingerprint in the silence. You know, we talked about Lou Smit a little bit last week, and we'll kind of go through his life and early career a little bit today, and then we jump into the whole investigation of the Heather Dawn Church case, or at least his investigation of it. So he was born in 1935, and he was raised in Colorado Springs.
Oh.
And he, like I said on the last episode, he was a very faithful Christian. And he married his grade school sweetheart.
Oh, no.
Barbara in 1958. So
it's a tug at the heart. Grade school?
Yeah, you hear a lot of high school sweethearts, but they were grade school sweethearts.
Wow.
So pretty much in love their entire life.
No doubt.
You know?
That's kind of the definition of soulmate, isn't it?
It kind of is. Yeah, I thought that was really freaking cool.
That's pretty sweet.
And so they had 4 children, Mark, Cindy, Lori, and Don. And through the 60s, they ran a couple of failed businesses, bottled gas and tree cutting in the early 1960s.
Bottled gas?
And so Lou prayed for guidance on what he was supposed to do within his life. And he saw that the police were hiring, and he took that as a divine answer and joined the Colorado Springs Police Department in 66. And like I said last week, he wasn't allowed to join because of his height.
Yes, he was not tall enough to ride the ride.
Too little, but somehow creatively him or the department figured a way around that. I'm not entirely sure.
I can imagine that was probably also a divine answer to him too, that they were able to figure it out.
Figure that out.
He's like, that's just even more says to me I'm supposed to be here.
I know. And, it's kind of funny because Lou Smit wasn't tall enough to be a cop. And now you got these cops that are like little bitty girls. Like, I see some of these cops that are just tiny little things. And so apparently
they're pretty badass, most of them.
Well, they probably kicked shit out of me.
Lie.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting how much, it had changed.
Yeah.
But so Lou, like pretty much all of them started as a patrol officer, and then he moved relatively quickly into being a homicide detective. And so his career progression at the Colorado Springs Police Department went from 66 to 95. So over 30 years investigating over 200 homicides. And with the Colorado Springs Police Department, he had over a 90% solve rate. He had over 200 convictions, and he never lost a case in court. Over 30 years, never lost a case in court.
He sounds like Liam Neeson's character who has a special set of skills.
Right. When it comes to investigating homicides, this dude had a special set of skills. No doubt about that. Like I said last time, he partnered with John Anderson. So they were partners kind of through the 70s and 80s. I think Anderson started in like 72 or something like that with the Colorado Springs Police Department. So, and Lou definitely kind of took him under his wing and everything. And then He advanced to detective, sergeant, and then captain, and developed forensic expertise. And obviously, that would be pretty significant. The changes in forensic investigation that you would see as a detective from 1966 until 1995.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot that happened during that time period,
Huge gap.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking if you go from 1930 something to 1966, there wasn't any huge changes forensically. There was some.
True, yeah.
But not tons. You had photography.
Life shattering and whatnot.
Yeah. You had, photography. So like back in the 30s is when they like drew the chalk lines around the body. And then
I miss that kind of.
I never
Is that weird?
experienced it. I wasn't alive in the 30s.
No, there you go, taking me literal again. There's just something about it. I know it's like movie drama stuff, but like I kind of think they should do it still.
It's kind of funny because
I don't know why.
On one of Joe Kinda's homicide hunters, he had a newbie patrol officer get on a murder scene first and did the chalk outline.
Yeah.
And Joe Kinda was like,
We don't do that.
who the hell did this? He's like, oh, it was, I don't know, Phillips or whatever the guy's name was. And so Kinda was like, yeah, we don't do this. Maybe in the movies, but not here. Don't ever do this again. But,
Bring it back. Bring it
in
back.
the 30s, that was a thing.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really have photography. So they needed to know where the body was lying and stuff. And so then
how big it was, what direction it was facing.
Yeah. And then, photography became a thing. And so that kind of became a thing of the past, but not huge differences. Fingerprints existed in the 30s. That was still the major means of identification in 66. But then from 66 to 95, you have unbelievable changes in forensics, up to and including DNA evidence, which wouldn't have even been thought about in 66. So I can't imagine seeing the changes occur to the investigative process over this guy's career. So, like I said, Lou Smit was deeply religious, and his faith was integrated into his work. Like I said, he prayed before every crime scene for guidance. He thanked God. Every time he won a case in court, he thanked God for it. He prayed with suspects. He prayed with families. I mean, that was just who he was. He was, how do I say this without offending people? I don't know. I mean, you see a lot of Christians that talk a big game, and that's about as far as it ever goes. And then you got a guy like this who lives and breathes his faith every day.
Yeah.
It's commendable. It's commendable whether you're a Christian or whether you're not a Christian. Anybody that lives their faith the way that this guy did, and it's ingrained in everything they do, it's pretty freaking incredible. But his investigative methods and style he was very evidence driven. He was kind of the one that let the evidence tell him what happened, as opposed to coming up with an idea and trying to make the evidence fit it. He really tried to go in with a clear mind and no preconceived notions and look at what the evidence was telling him. And he emphasized forensics. He used it as much as possible. His diagrams in like the John Benet Ramsey case are incredible. John Anderson reprinted them in the book that he wrote, Lou and John Benet. And I mean, he was so detailed. And then, like I said, in the last episode, he made all those videotapes meticulously walking through every corner of the Ramsey house. I mean, he would just really thorough.
Did you watch those all in one go, or did you break it up a little bit?
I watched them all in one go.
Wow.
Yep. He re-examined overlooked details. He created timelines, cross-references. Like I said, he did that spreadsheet for the John Benet case with like over 1,000 freaking names on it. He did all those drawings, and that's how he handled every crime scene.
Goodness sake.
He used the media. He pursued tips aggressively, and he never assumed guilt without proof. He challenged biases, and he maintained his fitness. He played golf, racquetball, he worked long hours, and his philosophy was do the best for the victims and their families. And that's really how he approached his entire career. And I think that goes a long way into why he had such a high solve rate, over the course of time at the Colorado Springs. I mean, obviously I told you that he left El Paso County Sheriff's with over 100%, but that was just like a year or just a little over a year that he was there. But over his entire career with the Colorado Springs Police Department, it was over 90%. So still, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And then he worked, like I said in the opening, on the Karen Grammer murder case, which, are you familiar with at all?
I had forgotten all about, I didn't know her name, but I'd forgotten all about there was something to do with Kelsey Grammer until you said that. And I don't know if you saw the light bulb go off, but I was like, oh yeah, that existed.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know who Kelsey Grammer is, first of all, crawl out from under the rock you've been living in, because
Frasier.
Yeah, he was pretty big. I mean, for the younger crowd, I guess I could understand if they don't know who he is, because I haven't seen him in anything for years.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, but he really got his big break in Cheers, in the show Cheers, and then from that led to the spinoff, which was Frasier. And he's been in several movies and stuff throughout the years, but he was a pretty big actor in the late 80s, early 90s. And
I have to know now.
And so his sister, Karen, was 18 years old and was raped and murdered in Colorado Springs. She was abducted right after her shift where she worked at a Red Lobster, and was found raped and stabbed multiple times. And it turns out that it was by a gang, which included Freddie Glenn and Michael Corbett, along with the others. They dumped the body, and Smit led the investigation, gathered the evidence, secured the confessions, got the convictions. Glenn was then sentenced to death, which was later commuted to life. And then the others were sentenced accordingly. And obviously the case gained major attention because of Kelsey Grammer's fame, and it showcased Smit's thoroughness and his empathy for the family. Would you look up over there?
I figured out the reason why you haven't seen him in a while.
Why?
It's been what appears to be a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies.
That would explain why.
That would be why you haven't seen him. But
it would.
He's got a TV series that he's part of coming out this year. I don't know if it already is.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of Christmas movies. I don't know that they're Hallmark, but it feels very Hallmarkian is what I'm going to go with.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would explain it. I have seen him in some of those types of movies for sure.
Yeah.
But, that Karen Grammer case was huge. Obviously, it was before I was around, but it was huge in Colorado Springs. And then it's also kind of interesting because Chris Christopherson plays Lou Smit.
Oh, wow.
In one of the movies about John Bonet. I can't remember the name of the movie, but...
An actual movie, not a docu, just an
actual movie. Okay. Yeah. And Chris Christopherson played Lou Smit. So John Anderson talks about that in his book because he got to meet Chris Christopherson, who was like one of his heroes. And then
that's pretty cool.
Lou Smit invited him and Chris Christopherson over to his house for dinner. So they all went over there for dinner and stuff. So pretty freaking cool, really. And Chris Christopherson wanted to spend as much time with Lou Smit as possible so that he could get his mannerisms and stuff like that down. So, and
I like it when actors do that.
I do too. And Chris Christopherson was a hell of an actor and an even better songwriter. I never cared all that much for his music, but man, that guy wrote some huge hits. A lot of people. That's kind of Lou's background. I mean, he really had a stellar career leading up to John Anderson asking him to join the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. And, you know, I said last week that they were really close friends and they really liked each other and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that had anything to do with John Anderson bringing him on board to be the chief of detectives. I think it was his skill level. And by that time, he was already legendary all across Colorado as like an unbelievable homicide investigator. So, and, you know, obviously with him being asked to join the John Benet Ramsey investigation, that speaks volumes to how highly respected he was in the state, how well known he was in the state by that period of time. He joined and went right to work on the Heather Dawn Church case, which is something that him and Anderson had already kind of talked about, that, you know, this was John Anderson's priority. He wanted this case solved. We talked, that's the whole reason that he ran for sheriff, is to solve this case. And so when Lou started, it's got to be so difficult to walk into a cold case.
No doubt.
It's hard enough to walk into a homicide investigation anyway. But when you're years away from the actual crime, it's got to be so damn difficult. And, you know, you didn't work it. It was a whole nother department. And so, but he read absolutely every piece of paper in the case file, everything, and just meticulously went over everything. And then the one thing that he just kept coming back to is this palm print that was fingerprints that were left on the screen to the bedroom. And like I said, that screen wasn't put in correctly. It was put in backwards. And so it didn't fit right. And
hastily.
Yes. Yeah. And so, you know, he was convinced that new fingerprint, or that fingerprint, was what this case really was going to be solved by. He thought that was the best evidence in the case. But like I said, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office had already submitted it and it came back with no match. And so he went to talk to the guy at the lab, or the fingerprint dude, or whatever the hell you call him, whoever the hell it was.
Fingerprint dude.
And they determined that, and I've heard of this in multiple different cases. I don't know if it's still this way, but back then, a lot of cops all across the country were under the assumption that when you submitted fingerprints to APHIS, like all of the fingerprints were housed in like one large depository. And when you submitted fingerprints to APHIS, it compared them against that whole depository of fingerprints. And so if it didn't match, then that meant that person had never been fingerprinted before. What him and so many others, like I said, I've heard this in multiple other cases, cold cases, where when they go back and look, what they discovered was, no, there's like all kinds of these fingerprint depositories, and you have to submit them separately to each one of them. So Lou Smit started digging in and trying to discover how many there were, and he identified 92 systems that this fingerprint had not been submitted to. And so, I mean, you think about that, and like I said, this has come up in multiple different cases. I think it was a huge failure on the part of probably the FBI. I don't know exactly. I don't know the history of APHIS. I think, though, that it came out of the FBI. But whoever, it was a huge failure, because I know for a fact multiple cops across the country was under the same assumption that these guys were under, which was the same assumption that I was under until I started seeing this in cases that, you know, when you run your fingerprints, it just ran against all of them.
Now, I need a reminder because every time you say the word, I just think of something that needs to be sprayed for. But what does APHIS stand for again?
The Automatic Fingerprint Identification System.
Okay. Does it not sound like something that somebody needs to spray for, though, when you just say the word APHIS?
Well, there's
anyway, I know, aphids.
Aphids.
But every time I'm like, my brain is special. Continue.
So, I mean, I can understand exactly why. I can't really fault the El Paso County Sheriff's Office for this oversight because, like I said, I've heard, I don't even know how many cases that were not solved because when they submitted the fingerprints, it came back as a no match and they had no idea that they needed to send them over the country. And
so are we foreshadowing that there's some decent news coming up?
Yeah, so it hit. Once they submitted them to those 92 different systems, it hit on a guy by the name of Robert Charles Browne, who had been arrested multiple times, but out of Louisiana, California, and he was a neighbor of Heather Dunn Church and the Church family. And he was actually talked to that morning the morning after she had went missing, but they never really dug into him at all. And so, you know, Lou Smit brings him in and starts questioning him. He's 38 years old. He was working as a tree trimmer, a handyman, and he lived about a half a mile from the church home in Black Forest. They questioned him on September the 18th, like I said, as the neighbor during the canvass, and he was cooperative. He denied any knowledge, and he allowed them to look around his property and everything.
Weasel.
Yeah. Oh, this guy's a major piece of shit. And he refused to let them look through a locked outbuilding without a warrant. But
let him look through everything else.
He let him look around the property. Did that not
raise a red flag with somebody?
Well, it sure as the shit should have, and it definitely does with me.
Yeah.
But they cleared him because they said that there was no probable cause, no reason to suspect him. His alibi was left unverified. His fingerprints were not matched initially, obviously, which I'm assuming that he had never been arrested in Colorado Springs because it should have definitely hit if he had a Colorado arrest. Yeah. But I don't know. It's striking to me that they didn't dig into this piece of shit deeper. You would think.
How do you let them look through everything but one thing? And you're just like, okay.
Well, that's just the thing. And then I guess it's just, I don't know, shitty police work. But wouldn't you, I mean, if you're an investigator and you're called into an abduction of a young girl, wouldn't you run the backgrounds of neighbors? Wouldn't you think that would be like a very preliminary investigative step, is to find out who these people are that are close to her and if they have a criminal record? Because we know this piece of shit did have a criminal record.
Do we know if he was friendly with the family so she would have trusted him?
No.
Okay. We don't know, or they weren't?
They weren't.
Okay.
No, and, you know, one of the things that ended up screwing him is, like we've talked about several times, they did exactly what good interrogators do. And the first thing they did is say, now, have you ever been to the church house? Did you ever do any work on the house or anything? No. Mm-hmm. So you never have been on the property? Nope. I've never been there. I've never set foot on the property. Then why are your fingerprints there? So they locked him into his story.
Yeah.
And then they sprung the trap. And what the hell was he going to say?
Yeah.
And it,
Oh, he's backpedaling. Oh, yeah, come to think of it.
yeah, he actually just confessed.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
He made it that easy, huh?
pretty much.
Wow.
So once they matched the fingerprint to this piece of shit, they went to Louisiana, where he was from, and talked to people down there, one of whom was an ex-wife of his, who just described an absolute freaking animal, that everything was just wonderful and peachy. They dated. He was like the nicest guy in the world. Everything was great. They got married, and he turned into a total piece of shit. And she said that she spent the majority of the marriage just bruised and beaten from head to toe. And then, there was multiple, I think, ex-wives that they interviewed that all pretty much said the same thing. The dude was an absolute pile of shit. He was suspected in like a rape in Louisiana, but he was never prosecuted for it. But he was interrogated by Lou Smit and John Anderson, and he ended up admitting that he killed Heather. And according to him, that it was a burglary, and that he surprised Heather, and that he admitted to hitting her once in the head and grabbing her neck to silence her, and that's where she was killed, is in the home. He denied any sexual assault, said that he removed the body through the patio door and drove her out to Rampart Range Road, which, like we said, was about 30 to 40 miles away, and dumped her body out there. So, he claimed that it was opportunistic, that he panicked. He showed absolutely no freaking remorse whatsoever. But I have a hard time believing that bullshit. And I don't think that they bought into that bullshit either. I think he would have had to have known that they were home.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not, but the lights were on all night. They were watching freaking Home Alone earlier in the night. Like, I think he broke in there specifically because Heather was home alone. He knew that.
Yeah. Was the baby brother, but it's not going to do much good.
No, it's not going to do much good at all. And he had to have known, I think, that Sage was in there, that Sage was in the crib. And I don't know. We've said it a million different times, the sane cannot understand the insane. But this piece of shit, in the next episode, we'll dig deeper into this animal. But I know I say this a lot, and it's amazing to me how often I end up saying this, but like, he's suspected as being one of the more prolific serial killers in the nation, and definitely one of the more prolific serial killers ever in Colorado, because he's suspected in over 48 different murders across the country.
Dang. I don't even know his name that well.
Most people have probably never even heard of it.
Yeah. Weird.
The one thing that really came from the episode that we did on Rocky Mountain Reckoning on serial killers is the realization that unless they're convicted, they're not famous.
Yeah.
Like Larry Dwayne Hall, that piece of shit. He's suspected in over 50 murders, but nobody knows that name. Russell Royal Long. That's another one. Hell, Delwayne Eaton.
Yeah.
Other than Wyoming people, he's not a household name.
And you.
And me. Yeah.
He's your white whale.
But Clark Perry Baldwin, Robert Ben Rhodes, the vast majority of the serial killers that we talked about during that episode are absolutely unknown.
Yeah.
Ted Bundy, we talked about him. He's a big one.
Yeah.
The Gallegos, they're pretty famous. There's been several books written about them and stuff.
Israel Keys.
Yeah.
It makes my skin crawl to even hear her say his name.
Yep. Akala. That's another one. The whole dating game connection and everything there. That made him pretty famous. But outside of them, the vast majority, nobody's ever even heard of.
Yeah.
You know, Gary Ridgway, he's a big name. Keith Jesperson, I think most people know that name. But Larry Dwayne Hall, nobody knows that. Robert Charles Browne, this piece of shit.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that name. And so I think that it really just comes down to, first of all, I think it comes down to the news cycle and how busy of a news day it is, or how busy of a news week it is when these cases come to light. And then...
Was it an election year?
Right.
Because that's all you're going to see.
And then, you know, how... what am I trying to say? Like how spectacular the crime is. Like, it was funny because I was in a conversation earlier today and I mentioned a new Ed Gein documentary.
Yeah, Charlie Hunnam's playing him.
That I just watched. I don't know. It's a documentary.
Okay. The limited series Monster.
I haven't heard nothing about that. That's about Ed Gein?
Well, it's a series. So the one that was just Jeffrey Dahmer, and then can't remember who the second one was, but now they're doing Ed Gein and Charlie Hunnam's playing him. So it's like it's the Monster is the name of the series, but each season is a different monster.
But it's like a theatrical thing. Yeah, I watch that. But I don't care for it.
It's a docu-series kind of. So it's not. I'm sure they take some liberties, but they don't take a whole lot. I'm not trying to talk you into watching it. I'm just saying I'm gonna watch it, but I'm gonna struggle with Charlie being a killer.
I don't know who Charlie is, so
you don't watch Sons of Anarchy?
Oh yeah, I do.
He's Jax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
He's Jax. Jax is a killer in a different sense.
That's what I was just gonna say. What do you mean he can't stand him being a killer?
No,
I've seen him and he's a freaking killer.
In a different sense.
He plays Ed Gein?
Yeah.
Ed Gein was like a little dorky freaking nothing of a guy.
Yep, he's going to play Ed Gein.
That should be interesting.
That's what I'm thinking.
Anyway, I was talking about this.
Anyway, we just turned to Siskel and Ebert for a minute.
This new documentary that I just watched on Ed Gein, and it's, oh boy, it shows the crime scene photos.
Boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And especially the one of Mrs. Warden, which I don't know if you're familiar with the story, but she was the one that was hung up like a deer and gutted and beheaded.
And they showed it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I heard the movies that we're going to watch, the West Memphis, they show in the beginning.
They do.
Yeah. So.
But not.
People do it.
I mean, that's pretty rough to see three little dead boys. To see a woman's body that is literally gutted like a deer and beheaded, I was very surprised they showed that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And then was
there a trigger warning at least?
Nothing, no. I mean, I think at the beginning of there was like, but there wasn't like you're about to see some shit that nobody wants to see.
That you can't unsee, yeah.
So I am issuing a trigger warning because it really doesn't bother me. I've seen shit on the ambulance and the fire department that nobody should have to see. So I've always been able to compartmentalize pretty well, but a lot of people can't. And so I'm telling everybody, it's a fascinating documentary, and Harold Schechter is in it. And are you familiar with Harold Schechter?
No, but if you're going to warn people, you should probably have timestamps so they can fast forward through it.
I don't know how many times they show it.
Oh, really?
The whole damn thing.
All right, never mind.
But Harold Schechter is a true crime author that has written, he wrote the book on Belle Gunness. He wrote the book on Ed Gein. He wrote the book on Alfred Packer. He's a phenomenal freaking researcher and pretty much wrote the definitive biography of Ed Gein. It's the best book I've ever read on Ed Gein. So Harold Schechter really knows his shit. So he's in there. But where I was going with that is I mentioned it, and the people I was talking to was like, who? And I'm like, Ed Gein? And they're like, I don't know who that is. And I was like, oh shit. Like,
wow.
I guess he's not his name isn't popular.
I thought it was
outside the true crime world, but I was like, and it was that
human skin belts and such.
Belts. Well, he made belts out of nipples.
I know, but
he
lamps.
made lampshades out of human skin. He covered his chairs in human skin. He had a box full of vulvas that he had painted. He had skin masks where he had like taken the skin off people's faces.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
a disturbing dude.
He was Buffalo Bill way before Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
That's where Silence of the Lambs came from, was Ed Gein. That's also where Psycho, the movie Psycho, came from.
Yeah, because his was a mom complex, wasn't it?
Yeah, to the point of we don't know if he was sexually involved with his mom or not, but we're pretty certain he wanted to be. And
okay.
He when she died, he just boarded up her room and left it untouched. It was like pristine. When they went in, the rest of the house was absolutely destroyed. Trash all over, body parts all over. I mean, he ate his soup. He used human skulls as soup bowls.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, and Silence of the Lambs are three big movies that were based on Ed Gein. So I was very surprised that the whole group, I was actually at therapy, and it was like everybody in therapy, all the therapists were like, who's that? Because they all talk true crime with me now all the time. Have you heard of this case? And what about this case? What do you know about that case?
Do they listen? Should you shout out?
I don't know if they're listening or not. But to my therapy team, you guys are freaking awesome listening. You rock.
There you go.
But I was very surprised that they hadn't heard of Ed Gein, and I thought he was such a big name.
Yeah.
But, then you talk about like these other cases, and maybe it's just true crime retards like me that know these names, but...
Oh, Ed Gein's a big name, though.
It was huge.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, we don't fault him, but...
No, of course not. But it was just surprising to me, because I think, like if Ted Bundy, I think everybody would know Ted Bundy. I think.
You'd have to be living under a giant rock not to know Ted Bundy, Gacy, Dahmer.
But
Son of Sam.
In many respects, Ed Gein was worse than at least some of them. Not maybe killing, because he only killed 2 people that we know of. But the depravity.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a human heart in the skillet on the stove when the cops went in there. Like, it doesn't get much more depraved than the shit that he did.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
He's right up there with H.H. Holmes, except for he killed more people.
Well, the interesting thing about Ed Gein, though, is I don't think that he wanted to hurt people. Like, he wasn't a sadist. I don't think he got off on causing pain. He was trying to recreate his mother. He was freaking Norman Bates. Who was trying to be his mother. Like,
I know.
Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird we're making references to movies, but they were based on his whole, what he was doing. And like, they never confirmed whether he ever dug his mom up or not. He said he wasn't able to. And there was something about maybe she was covered in concrete and he wasn't able to get her body out. It makes you wonder if he would have been able to get his mom's body.
But he admitted to trying?
He was, all he said is, I couldn't do it.
Oh, okay.
But it makes you wonder if he was able to get his mom's body, if he would have just never hurt anyone.
That does make you wonder.
Because he dug up like half the freaking cemetery. They don't even know. They took all the body parts and...
Oh, because he was robbing?
Yeah.
Like parts, yeah.
They took all the body parts that they found in his house and basically put them in a mass grave because they had no idea who went to who. And they never... And this one's a little bizarre to me because I can understand it and I can't understand it. But they never exhumed... Like, I'd have exhumed the whole freaking cemetery. I'd been like, dig up every freaking grave. We've got to know.
There's an expense to that, though.
I don't give a shit, man. If it was my loved one, I would
I'm
be
just
like,
playing devil's advocate. That's
I
fine.
get it. I get it. I completely understand. But if it was my loved one, I'd be like, you dig that freaking hole where I'm going to, because I need to know if they're there or not.
Yeah.
And then, like, this new documentary that I was watching, they offered to dig up his mom and the town said no.
Ed Gein's mom?
Yeah, to see if she was in there.
She's probably the only one that was.
Or if he actually got her, because they don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, it's very surprising. Can
you imagine that vote at a town hall meeting?
Whether we're going to exhume the
serial killer's mom? Well, don't you need more than two to be a serial killer?
Yeah, technically, he's not a serial killer.
Yeah.
That we know of. There was a couple that went missing.
Psycho's mom, we'll say.
A couple of people that went missing. One was like a 14-year-old girl that wasn't too far from Plainville where he lived. And then there was like another woman that I think disappeared that he was suspected of. But he's only known to have killed two. And that was Mrs. Warden. And I can't remember the other woman's name. She ran a bar in town. And he killed those two. All the rest of them were grave robberies. So technically, he's not a serial killer. He's just and then I'm pretty positive he killed his brother. That's almost certain. I mean, it was so many years before. But that's what I mean when I say that he didn't really get off on hurting people. I don't think that he was like a serial killer and that he had this insatiable urge to kill like some of these freaking whack jobs. His paraphilia was body parts. And I think that the only reason that he ended up killing was because he'd used up all the fresh bodies in the cemetery.
Yeah.
He needed a fresher one. Otherwise, I don't think he ever would have killed. It's a bizarre case, but it surprised me that they didn't know that. And apparently, outside of like the true crime community, a lot of these big names are just not known. But
can't decide if that's good or bad.
I know. But in this particular case, we kind of went off on a tangent there, but in this particular case, we got Robert Charles Browne. And I don't know, it's tough because we'll find out that he was linked to and convicted of a second murder in Colorado. But we've talked about this before, and that is, I can understand why agencies don't investigate a person that's already in prison because it's quote unquote a waste of resources. On the other side of the coin, then that means that, he's been convicted of 2 and he's suspected in more than 48. So that means that there's like 46 families out there that don't have a definitive answer.
Yeah.
That's a tough one to convince me of. I think that as a society, we have a moral obligation to provide answers to families if we can. What does that look like? I don't know what that looks like. Does that look like every state having a dedicated department that does nothing but work cases like that? I don't know. Maybe. Because we know that standard law enforcement investigators cannot commit the time necessary to investigate cold cases. Some of them have cold case units. Others don't have any cold case units, but cold case units are something that has come up, but they're working only that particular case. And so I don't know. should there be somebody, some organization that is investigating other cases that are potentially linked to one particular perpetrator? Kind of think there should be. What that looks like, how that all plays out, I don't really know. But when we're talking about like Rodney Akala, who has a collection of over 1,000 photographs of women who may or may not be dead, think that somebody needs to be diligently working that, trying to identify every one of those people. And the list is long as freaking could be, you know. On Rocky Mountain Reckoning, we just covered Naomi Kidder, who is potentially, and I think very likely, linked to Larry Dwayne Hall. But because Hall's in prison,
they're just like, whatever.
And I don't know if it's that or if there's just no evidence, but I don't know. It does seem like we need to be investigating all of these potential serial killers to locate every potential victim that we possibly can.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have some of them like, what's his nut? The co-ed killer, the great big son of a bitch, Ed Kemper. You have somebody.
My brain's going through all these names.
You have somebody like Ed Kemper who was really open about all of his kills. And I think there's a pretty good likelihood that he didn't hide anything because he just opened up to John Douglas and just pretty much said everything. But then you have others like Delwayne Eaton, like Larry Dwayne Hall, like the son of a bitch we're talking about tonight, Robert Charles Browne, that maybe like with both Robert Charles Browne and Larry Dwayne Hall, they confess to all these and then recant it. It's like a freaking game.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of those out there. I don't think we know all of Bundy's victims.
Probably not.
I don't think we know all of the Gallegos victims. I mean, the list is just long on every one of these pieces of shit. And so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but you know, next episode, we're going to be jumping into this piece of shit and kind of what came out of the investigation and what kind of a freaking sick animal he is. But I think we have bodies all over the country tied to this son of a bitch. And probably a large portion of them have never been found because he admittedly buried multiple victims in like Louisiana and California. And so we don't have a clue.
Yeah. Is he still alive?
Yeah, as far as I know, he's still doing time in the Colorado Correctional Institution, one of them.
Yeah. One of the 15.
Well, it's hard because, you know, like Chris Watts was sentenced in Colorado, but he's doing his time in like somewhere else, Michigan or some shit like that.
I knew somebody who was sentenced in Utah and did his time in Arizona.
Right. And even though Colorado has more freaking prisons than anybody else.
Yeah, they send him somewhere else.
For his safety, which I could give a shit about Chris Watts' safety.
Because where's the safety for those two little girls, Shanann and that little baby? Come on.
Shanann, Celeste,
I couldn't remember.
Bella, and Nico.
Yeah. I knew Shanann and Nico. I couldn't remember the little girls' names.
Yeah, Bella and Celeste. I mean, that case hits me hard because the whole thing took place less than a mile from my house when I was living down there. The son of a bitch was just damn near my neighbor. I remember the cop cars all over the freaking place. I remember all of that going down.
Yeah.
I mean, it hit way too close to home for me. But, you know, he's being held somewhere else. So I should know. I'll look it up before the next episode to make sure that I know where this piece of shit's at. But I'm sure he's still alive, and I think he's doing time in Colorado, actually. So, but
just makes me wonder if he would talk.
No, I don't think so. You'll see he plays games when we get to the next episode. He's a game playing piece of shit son of a bitch. So, yeah, no, he likes to tease. He's a truly evil sociopath that has no feelings for anybody else but himself.
I was just hoping that since he came right out and admitted it, maybe, just maybe.
No, he likes to play games.
Fun.
You'll find that out in the next.
Okay.
Some arrests happen in a blaze of sirens. Others come slowly after years of silence and failure. Robert Charles Browne didn't expect anyone to come for him. He certainly didn't expect to be undone by a fingerprint that he left behind 2 years earlier. But Lou Smit was watching, listening, and waiting. When Smit reopened Heather's case, he didn't reinvent the wheel. He didn't storm in with press conferences or bold claims. He just did what others had failed to do. He looked carefully. He paid attention. And he believed that even in the coldest case, evidence still speaks. That one latent fingerprint left on a piece of Heather's bedroom window had been sitting in the system, quietly waiting for someone to match it. When it finally hit, Browne, a drifter, a former truck driver, a man with a history of violence, and he was hiding in plain sight. The arrest of Robert Charles Browne didn't just solve a case, it shattered a wall of silence that had stood for 4 long years, and it proved something important, that justice, no matter how delayed, is still possible when the right people are finally listening. Lou Smit didn't carry a reputation because he sought glory. He carried it because he earned it, case by case, victim by victim, one unanswered question at a time. And in Heather's case, he proved once again that you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to pay attention. The Heather Dawn Church case finally had a name, and soon the world would learn just how dangerous that name really was. There's a moment in every case when the unknown becomes known, when a name, just a name, changes everything. Robert Charles Browne, that's the name Heather Dawn Church's family was finally given. The man who took her, who silenced her, who discarded her in a ravine and counted on the world forgetting. But Heather wasn't forgotten. And when that fingerprint matched, when the arrest was made, it wasn't just about law enforcement closing a file. It was about restoring something that had been stolen. Truth. It didn't erase the grief. It didn't bring Heather back, but it gave her family something solid, something that they could speak out loud. Because knowing who did it means you can finally stop blaming the wrong people, stop questioning yourself, stop living in limbo. But let's be clear, this isn't a triumph, it's a reckoning. Because to know who took Heather means having to sit with the reality of what she endured, what he took from her, what she never got to become. She never got to finish high school. She never got to see her brothers grow up, never got to become the woman that she was meant to be. But in solving her case, Heather gave something back to the world. She showed us what justice can look like, even when it arrives years too late. And she reminded us that victims are not statistics. They are stories. They are lives. They are daughters, sisters, classmates, artists, and dreamers. Heather's name will never belong to Robert Charles Browne. It belongs to her family, to the people who never stopped fighting for her, and to the justice that finally said, "We see you." This is for Heather, for the silence that ended, and for the voice that still echoes.
If this case moved you, if Heather's story matters to you like it matters to us, take a moment right now to support it. Follow the show, give us a rating, hit that thumbs up, heart, or 5 stars, whatever your platform calls for. And most importantly, share this episode, because the more people who hear her name, the louder her voice becomes.
And you can also support the work that we do by visiting darkdialogue.com. There you'll find case files, bonus content, and links to our adoptive victim program, where you can help spotlight other cold cases still waiting for answers. We're also on Patreon and Ko-fi if you'd like to help fund this work directly.
Have a tip or a case you want covered, or something that needs to be said, reach out to us at info@darkdialogue.com. We read everything and we never stop listening.
Next episode, we'll take a hard look at the man behind the finger, Robert Charles Browne, who he was, what he admitted to, and the trail of destruction that he may have left behind across the country, because one solved case led to a terrifying possibility. Heather wasn't the only one.
This story's far from over, so if you haven't already, please subscribe, follow, and stay with us. Because the only way to make sure these cases aren't buried is to keep digging.
This is Dark Dialogue. Until next time, keep the dialogue alive.